Welcome to a special edition of the War Room with Chris and Eddie. We are here to discuss the Joshua Fury Wilder saga that is brewing in the news and on social media. I'm here with my co-host Eddie Goldman, award-winning journalist and the conscience of combat sports from NHB News. What's going on, Eddie?
How you doing? How you doing? We are speaking, since this is an ever-changing story, on Thursday afternoon, May 20th. Yesterday, May 19th, was Malcolm X Day, the 96th anniversary of his birth that many people marked. And what's been going on in boxing with this whole thing, this mess in the heavyweight division, as you said, involving Fury and Joshua and Wilder, reminds me of a quote, and I won't be able to, of course, say it like Malcolm did, and hopefully we could get the audio up of that. But in his famous ballot or the bullet speech, speaking about politicians, he said, "You've been misled, you've been had, you've been took." And that's what's been happening with the reports of these negotiations that they were supposedly virtually done between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury to have a heavyweight title unification fight in Saudi Arabia, August the 14th, with maybe a rematch somewhere down the road. There was the lingering issue of what happened to a third fight between Fury and Deontay Wilder. And if you remember what happened, the first fight they had was declared a draw, which was a preposterous decision, because even though Fury was knocked down twice in the fight, those were 10-8 rounds for Wilder. He won almost every other round, maybe 9 or 10 of the rounds, and he should have won on points. But, you know, boxing judges are boxing judges and come up with these funny decisions every week, and that's never really investigated by anybody. So they had a rematch in the second fight, and Fury said he was going to change his tactics. He was going to move forward. He was going to come forward, and he was going to knock out Wilder. And almost nobody believed him. I believed him that he was capable of doing it. The only thing I got wrong, I thought it would be a little later in the fight than it was. So by the seventh round, after battering around Wilder, the fight was stopped by who was then the trainer, Mark Breland, Olympic gold medalist, former world champion, stopped the fight to save Wilder from any further punishment, and it was a TKO win for Tyson Fury. That was at the end of February 2020, of course, which coincided with the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic.
Right.
So there was supposed to have been a third fight in the contract between Fury and Wilder. Everything, of course, got delayed. There were some smaller fights, but a bigger fight like that, they wanted a bigger venue, obviously. So all that got pushed back and got delayed. So then there was talk of them doing it towards the end of 2020, and it never got done. In the meantime, if you remember, Wilder fired his trainer, Mark Breland, came up with conspiracy theories that everybody was plotting against him. You know, this sounded like he was reading QAnon
He was making
or
excuses.
something like this.
Yeah, he was making excuses, blaming it on the weight of his suit and all that bullshit.
Yeah, he wore some cockamamie costume during the ring walk, and he said it wore him out, all kinds of crap. The fact is, Tyson Fury exposed him as a fighter by coming forward, realizing that you could be knocked out. He had been knocked down a couple of times by Wilder, but he's not invincible. And he's a terrible boxer. He moves terribly. People jokingly have called Wilder windmill for years.
For real.
And Fury didn't. You're right. Fury didn't buy any of that. And of course, we saw what happened. So Wilder believed his own propaganda, and we don't really know at this point how messed up his mind was, his body was. But the fact is, by the end of 2020, there was talk that, well, they would have the third fight And then there was talk that Fury would fight somebody else, and a couple of other names are thrown out. Never happened. Joshua, also in December 2020, fought his IBF mandatory Kubrat Pulev, and he knocked him out, and so he satisfied that. And then there were negotiations for the unification fight between Fury and Joshua that went on and on and on, every little detail up and down. Bob Arum saying something different every day, saying that it was a done deal, then saying it was dead in the water. And you could make a chart where it just goes up and down and up and down in terms of what Arum says. Hearn was announcing it's signed, it's done every other day, meaning that each little part of the agreement that had been settled, everything was done. And so this went on and on and on till on last Sunday, Fury finally said, "Yeah, it's 100% going to happen." And they had a date. They knew it was in Saudi Arabia. They had to tighten up where exactly was it going to be? Was it going to be in or around Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, or on the western part of Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, which is more of an entertainment capital that's on the Red Sea, and they get a lot of tourists coming there. They also get people who are going to the Hajj coming into Saudi Arabia, going into there. So there's a major international airport there. They were tightening all that stuff up. They had to tighten stuff up with the networks. Nobody viewed that as an obstacle. It just had to be decided one way or the other. And all along there was the question, well, what happened to the third fight between Fury and Joshua? And Arum was telling everybody, and Arum is a lawyer. I think he used to be in the prosecutor's office a long time ago in the federal government, that that deal was expired, that they had to get it done by the end of 2020, and Wilder's team wouldn't agree to anything. And if that was, then that deal was over and they could move on. And so Wilder's people took it to binding arbitration, and they put out their decision. The arbitrator put out his decision on Monday, and was that Fury had to fight Wilder on or before September 15th, which is a Wednesday, by the way, but sometime before then. And so then all the speculation came out. What was really going to happen? Would there be a step-aside fee paid to Wilder so they could have this ultra-lucrative fight between Joshua and Fury in the summer? There were all kinds of things posted on social media back and forth. Fury and Joshua got into it. Everybody was calling everybody names on social media. But the one person that I didn't see too many people calling names was Bob Arum. And apparently, unless he was fibbing or exaggerating or bending the truth, Eddie Hearn had said he was assured, of course, as Joshua's promoter, he had been assured by Arum that there was no problem, that they could go ahead and do all these negotiations, that he could give all these almost daily updates, make all these plans, and that this thing would be settled by the arbitrator. Well, it wasn't. Arum was wrong, and Arum was arrogant in what he was saying. And if Eddie Hearn made mistakes, it was being too confident to believe anything that Bob Arum says, because this contract had nothing to do with Eddie Hearn or Matchroom. It was a contract between Fury and his team and Wilder and his team. And they were negotiating with Fury for this other fight, but Matchroom and Joshua were on the outside of this. So then there was speculation, is there going to be a step-aside fee? Arum said they're not negotiating. They're not going to pay a step-aside fee. They'll do a fight July 24th in Las Vegas and get Wilder out of the way, and then do Fury and Joshua later in the year. But there are a lot of ifs in there too. Will Wilder sign a contract by then? Will he try to get a step-aside fee? It would make sense for him to try to get a step aside fee, because if he gets that, he could sit on his butt or train and get free money, no risk,
Right.
because he's been beaten twice in essence by Fury. The draw was an absurd
Right.
decision. Almost everybody watching it had Fury winning on points, and then the second fight was a blowout. So what do you think's going to happen? What are the odds that he's going to be able to win a third fight,
Right.
especially after all of his mental meltdown? So the, the logical thing to do, which doesn't happen in boxing, would be for him to accept a step aside fee, let Fury and Joshua fight, have part of the agreement that he would get the winner in November or December, which would be a huge fight, because that the winner would be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, assuming that some of the alphabets wouldn't strip that person for fighting Wilder instead of whomever they want. That's certainly a possibility. And have them sit ringside at Fury and Joshua, and they can all mouth off at each other and build the fight
Right.
up, and the WWE style that they've been doing. So now it's a complete mess. There's no guarantee that Wilder's going to accept the contractual terms that Arum offers him, and you're going to be doing a fight. Remember, Fury and Joshua would be on UK pay-per-view. Saudi Arabia is just a couple hours ahead of the UK. So if you're doing it on a Saturday night, you could do it late Saturday night, maybe 11 o'clock or midnight or whenever in Saudi Arabia, and it would be in the usual time that pay-per-views are on in the UK, which would be in the afternoon or early or late afternoon in the United States. But you're going to get fewer buys there anyway in the United States for a Fury and Joshua fight. Now, if you're going to have Fury fight Wilder in Las Vegas, and they do that fight, say, starting at 11 or 12 at night Eastern Time, 8 or 9 p.m. Pacific Time, that's going to be like 4 or 5 in the morning in the UK. How many people are going to buy the live pay-per-view? Then, plus, it just involves Fury, who is not the major draw in the UK in this fight, and Wilder that, look, people in the US don't care about Wilder, and even less so in the UK. And it's going to be in the summertime. And it's also going to be, we don't know, despite what the IOC is saying, the status of the Olympics really going to start on July 23rd. But if they do, you're running it that fight on the weekend when the Olympics start. So it's not going to, and plus for a pay-per-view, people not interested in that fight. They've seen it already. So that fight is not the most lucrative in the world. And if you're getting paid in part off of the gate and off of the pay-per-view, it's not going to be much as if if Wilder would take a step-aside fee and then fight for the undisputed championship later in the year, be it in Las Vegas or Wembley Stadium or Saudi Arabia or New York or wherever. But Wilder's people and Heyman's people are not the most logical. They've, to a large degree, particularly Heyman's, run PBC into the ground by giving these terrible fights and fights nobody wants to see to Fox, putting on fights like Andy Ruiz and Chris Arreola on pay-per-view, and just wringing as much money out of Fox Showtime as they can and getting tiny results for it. So maybe they also want to cash out on Wilder, or maybe they believe their own propaganda. Because if Wilder fights Fury on July 24th and gets starched again, and some people know, Arum predicted it, you'd expect this, that Fury's going to knock him out faster than he did the first time. Might happen. But if Wilder gets overwhelmed again, his days as a contender, that pushes him back several years. And he's not getting any younger at this point. This
No,
might be the
he'll
last
probably
time he gets.
retire. Yeah, he'll probably retire.
or he'll be doing crap fights, or he could be end up fighting, on Triller against some,
Exactly.
some singer or
Exactly.
a race car driver or
Dancing with the
a
Stars.
stripper. Yeah. So right, right. He could be doing that, or he could do WWE because that's about his cultural level. So he's 35 and he's not getting any younger. So we'll see what choices he makes. The logical choice, if he wants to get all that money, is to take the step aside fee and go for the bigger fight later in the year. But there's still a certain amount of ifs there because anything could happen. Anything could happen if you delay a fight, as we've seen. It could be contractual problems. Somebody could be cut, could be injured. You could list anything in the world, particularly the world of boxing. So he may want to go right in. And if he wants to fight July 24th, that's in about 2 months. He claims to have been training, and his new trainer is Malik Scott, who has
Wait,
no
wait, wait,
record as
wait a minute. Hold on a second. Malik Scott, the fighter Malik Scott, the King Scott.
same same guy. I
Okay,
don't know if
Malik.
they maybe they have him training, maybe they have him training for the Olympics in the sport of diving. I don't know.
Oh my God,
But
those. Well, look, well, they're boys. I understand that, but yeah, I don't know about maybe Malik can coach him into to being a better fighter. You never know. I doubt it because he's
guy's
35.
35 years old.
Right. Well, at
He's
least maybe
35
sharpen
years
up
old.
his game.
Nothing's
Shit.
doesn't it doesn't I don't think it matters at this point. I don't think it matters at this point. So it's going to be the
Wow,
worst
Malik.
decision if
Congrats,
he
Malik.
takes that.
Go ahead, Daddy. I'm sorry.
Well, it's be the worst decision for Wilder in most cases if he takes his fight in 2 months and gets starched again, and that's going to be it. So maybe PBC wants to get rid of him and cash him out also. Maybe they learn something from these two fights that he's not what they thought, but that means that they have people at PBC that really understand boxing. A lot of people have pointed out that there aren't real smart boxing people at PBC. You have business people, media people, and all this, but people that really understand boxing, so that that's really lost its luster. So that could
Right.
be the end of it. And then if Wilder's in a position where Fury has to give him a fight, is he going to screw around on the date and the location and all of that stuff, or are they just going to take whatever Aram offers him? And that depends on what the contract said too, and it depends what the arbitrator said in terms of the specifics of the decision, and that stuff is private, so it's not released. So Aram is talking about, well, it's going to be July 24th in Las Vegas. Well, do Wildest people have no say in this? I don't really know the answer to that. But again, I go back to this whole thing went as far as it did because people believed Bob Arum, and that's one of the first rules of boxing club. Don't
Don't
believe
believe the promoter.
anything that don't believe this. He already told you yesterday I was lying. Today
Yeah.
I'm telling the truth.
All right.
He already told you that, so he told you who he is, and that's kind of the mess that we're at. And for Joshua, if they the next mandatory he has to fight is the WBO mandatory, Alexander Usyk. And the WBO said, okay, if you're going to fight a unification fight with Fury, who had the WBC belt, along with the other ones that are not officially recognized, like the Ring Magazine belt and the Imaginary Lineal belt and all that stuff, they said, okay, we will not enforce the mandatory. We'll let you fight Fury, and then the winner will then have to fight our mandatory Usyk. Now, but they also said if Fury was going to fight Joshua, Usyk was going to have to fight Joe Joyce, who knocked out Daniel Dubois. So that fight, they were going to have to fight to create either an interim champion or something like that, or the number one contender, whatever they were going to call it. And that winner would then fight Joshua or whoever had the WBO belt. But if there was going to be no fight this summer between Fury and Joshua, that Joshua would have to fight Usyk. And so that's apparently where we are at this point. On the other hand, we don't know that all this talk that Arum said we're never going to pay a step-aside fee, Wilder and his team saying we're not going to take a step-aside fee. Well, that's what they said. Is that really so? Arum said there are no negotiations about that going on. Frank Warren, the other co-promoter of Fury, kind of said something a little more ambiguous, a little different. So we're going to find out what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if after they said there will be no step-aside fee, that there is a step-aside fee.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at the top 10 heavyweights right now in the world, and this list is kind of weak. I'm looking at Fury,
Yes.
Joshua, Wilder, Dylan White's 4, Andy Ruiz, Usyk 6. Povetkin is still ranked number 7. Michael Hunter is
Because
ranked
he
number
knocked out Dylan White. He knocked out Dylan White, and they're supposed to have a rematch, but Povetkin, I think, had a coronavirus or something.
Oh, I thought, okay. Yeah, I must have watched the wrong fight then, because I thought Povetkin got knocked out.
He got knocked down, and he was losing the fight when he came in that last round with the uppercut, and he got the knockout.
Oh, I missed that then. So,
Right.
all
So
right,
there were all
Eddie,
these
what
guys.
else? Go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. The bottom line is, don't believe what this guy says. Don't believe what Bob Arum says unless you have a lot of really good sources, because you're going to end up being very, very disappointed about all this. And Malcolm X in 1964 was not only talking about the politicians, but if we looked at today, he'd be talking about these boxing promoters, including, in particular, Bob Arum.
Right. And people like Don King.
Don, but Don is sort of out of the, it's not doing a whole lot today.
No,
So
I
that's
just
why I didn't
meant when
mention
he
Don.
was in his heyday, though, he was one of the biggest shit talking lion ass promoters out there.
He also delivered a lot of big fights too.
He did, but all the bullshit in the process. But anyway, so if that's all we
Right,
have
right.
today for the Joshua Fury Wilder saga, then we're gonna call this show a wrap. Eddie, I want to thank you for joining us today in the War Room, and we will see you on Twitter at NHB News. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Angry Afro Radio. And what, Eddie, you
Yeah,
are now
subscribe
on
to my
Clubhouse.
Patreon.
Oh, and subscribe to Eddie's
Yes, we're
Patreon.
both on Clubhouse. And subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. And I had a little, before we go, I got to give the results of the poll that we have up here so far. I put up did you see my poll?
I did. I wanted to vote
Twitter?
2 or 3 times.
Yeah, you could only vote once, and it's been
I
seen
blamed
over
Aaron,
1,000 times.
Yeah.
Right. As we are speaking on Thursday evening, my time, Bob Arum is winning in a landslide. The question was,
Right.
who was mainly responsible for the possible collapse of Fury Joshua? And Bob Arum has 71.9% of the votes.
Yep.
Tied for second are Frank Warren and Al Heyman at 12.5%. And some people voted for Eddie Hearn at 3.1%. So
I didn't blame
there
her,
we
but
there
I
we go.
definitely voted for Aram.
Yeah, and Aram, I'm sure, is going to say that the election was stolen or something like
Exactly, asshole. All right, Eddie, that's all we
so you
have
can
for
vote on
today.
Twitter.
Yeah, go vote
Very
on
good. Thank
Twitter.
you.
All right, Eddie, see you
Go
later.
vote.
Go vote.
Take care.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap.